Did you know that I have a quilt pattern? I sure do. This pattern came out a couple of years ago, and it sort of just quietly hung out in the background while all of my tote tutorials have sort of taken front and center. This pattern is unique and special in its own way, and I want to tell you exactly why today. And we're gonna make this quilt together. Let's get into it. I call this the throwback quilt, and I do that for two reasons. Throw is in reference to the size that you will get when you create this beautiful quilt. Back is because we are going to be using wide back quilt backings to make the entire quilt. I know, some of you probably don't even know what those are. Let me explain that part first. Traditional quilting cotton is usually around 44 inches wide. That's from selvage to selvage. That's how wide your fabric is. But there's also a section of the quilt store or the online quilt shop for wide back quilt backings. And those fabrics, so let me show you the difference. So just for reference, this is 44-inch wide fabric, regular quilting cotton. A wide back quilt backing is going to be way bigger. This is still a 1 yard cut of fabric, but look how long that is. It's usually between 105 to 120 inches long, depending on what brand you purchase. And that is from selvage to selvage. Do you see how big this piece of fabric is? Wide back fabrics are typically used to back your quilt so that you have less seams going across the back of the quilt to make it look more professional. However, there is no written rule saying we can't use this fabric for the front of our quilt. So that's what we're doing today. You are going to need 2 yards of 105 to 120 inch wide back quilt backing. For my quilt today, I'm going to use this one and I'm going to use this one. So a little accent fabric. One quick note about this pattern is it's fun to use a light and a dark against each other. It really makes this pattern pop. So that's step one. You may be asking yourself, well, why did she do it this way? Couple reasons. The first is for those of you who are just starting out your sewing journey, going into a quilt shop can sometimes feel overwhelming, especially if you're not really sure what you're looking for. So with this pattern, it's giving you a mission. You're going into the quilt shop, and when the associate asks you, what can I help you find today? You can say, I'm looking for your wide back quilt backing section. And when they show you that, you're going to see that it's a lot smaller of a section than the rest of the store. That's helpful for those of you just starting out because I think it takes some of the anxiety out of trying to be real matchy-matchy with your fabrics. I could spend all day in the fabric store trying to come up with just 2 fabrics that I like to put together. This is a smaller sample size for you to choose from, which will make it less stressful for you. So gives you a mission in the quilt shop, gives you less stress when choosing your fabrics. And the third reason we're doing this, and I haven't talked about this yet, is this whole quilt can be made using your serger. Does it have to be done on your serger? 100% no. You don't have to do this on your serger at all. You can sew this entire project on your regular sewing machine. But I created this pattern because a lot of you have been asking questions of, how does a serger work? How do I get comfortable with my serger? Can I make a quilt on a serger? And the answer is absolutely you can. Why would you do it on a serger? Also a couple reasons there. First of all, it's a great way to get practice using your serger and getting comfortable with it. When we cut up these wide back fabrics, they're going to just be extremely long strips that you are just going to sew straight through. That is giving you a great opportunity to get some of that muscle memory down on how to use a serger properly, how to maintain a 1/4 inch seam, and just get the feel of it. A serger can be a little overwhelming, let's be honest. It's loud, it's got 4 spools of thread, it's got knives, it's got 2 needles. Everything about it screams stress. I want to take that part out of the equation for you. So this is a serger optional quilt that we are using wide back backing fabric for. So all of this so far is completely different than regular quilting, but the actual quilt is going to turn out just the way a normal quilt would. The bonus is that the back of your seams, the whole back of your quilt, will have finished seams. What's fun about that is if you want to just make the quilt top and use it, let's say, to hang in a window, or if you just want to use it as a tablecloth or something, you can do that with this. It'll have serged seams, so nothing is going to fray on you, which makes it kind of fun. So if you're ADHD like me and you get to the end of the quilt top and you're like, that's enough for me, you can be done because all of your raw edges will be completely concealed. This pattern is available on my website in both print and PDF versions. I'm going to put a link in the description below. It's a wonderful, different way to look at making a quilt, and it gives you practice with your serger. It gives you experience with wide back backing fabrics. It's just a fun pattern overall, and it's very simple to make, you guys. This is not rocket science. It's meant to be fun and easy and just a nice chill day in your sewing room. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how to cut these fabrics up because we're just cutting really long strips. Really, truly, guys, this could not be easier. Oh, one quick thing to note too. I forgot to mention this. When you're picking out your wide back fabrics, I would recommend picking something that is non-directional. Do you see how the flowers are just kind of going any way on this? That's what we're looking for. I originally wanted to do this adorable strawberry fabric, but the problem is, and this is something you may not think about, so it's worth mentioning when you're at the fabric shop, is look at the direction of your fabric and the print on it. I'm going to be cutting the strips this way. And as you can see, my strawberries would not be going in the right direction for that. So as much fun as this would have been, I'm saving myself a lot of grief here by not using this fabric. I'm going to just save this for another project. Don't worry, little strawberries. You'll have your day in the sun. All right, let's cut some fabric. Step one when cutting fabric is always, always, always press your fabric. I've already pressed this piece out, so it is ready to be cut. And now we're ready to fold it. So ordinarily, when you're cutting a smaller, regular quilting piece of cotton, it's just going to be folded over one time. For the wide back, we're going to fold it over twice because we need to be able to maneuver this on our sewing table. And this is a lot of fabric to try and sort out. So I'm going to fold it over one time. Try to keep your edges as even as possible. But here's the other beauty part about this quilt pattern. I built in extra fabric into the fabric requirements, assuming that you are a beginner and you might make mistakes when you're cutting it. So, and a lot of times you can't buy wide back or any quilting cotton at a lot of fabric stores in under yard increments anyway. So you're gonna have to buy a yard regardless. So you might as well have some extra. Like this whole section down here is gonna be extra. So if you screw up, you're fine. You can just fix it and cut a new piece. And that's because I love you and I don't want you to fail. So this is my first folded over edge, and I'm going to fold it over again. Even up your top edges, get everything as straight as you can, give it a shake, and then lay it out on your table. Make sure your underside is nice and flat. So see, this is still kind of rolling on me, so I'm going to fix it and do it again. Okay, everything is nice and flat. I have cut just a short edge off to square up my fabric and get it really straight on that side edge. And now all we need to do is cut 5 4-inch strips that are by the width of the fabric. And that means the full length from selvage to selvage. So I'm going to measure that out using my acrylic ruler. And this is a little bit longer than my ruler. My ruler is 24 inches by 6 inches, and that's okay. I'm going to just scooch it up a little bit to cover that last little section. There's one strip. We're going to cut 5 of these, and then I'll meet you back here and show you how to cut the other little strips that we need on this particular fabric. So I've got 5 4-inch strips. And now with the remainder of this fabric, I'm going to cut the last 3 strips, which will just be 2 inches. This is your inner border. So now is the time to think about this. Whatever you want this smaller border to be, that's what you're going to cut it out of. I'm going to cut mine out of this pink, and then I'm going to make the floral my outer border. My fabric A is this one. Fabric B, we're going to cut a little differently. That's for the floral fabric. So cut 3 2-inch strips that are all the way across the width of the fabric. Okay, we've got our 3 2-inch strips. And now you've got this leftover fabric just in case you make a mistake, which we all do. So you have some forgiveness here, which is great. Let's cut the floral fabric. This fabric is just so dreamy. It's by Liberty of London. Let's see if I can find the name here. Cosmos Park. If you want to look it up online, there's the information. I'll let you screenshot that if you want it. And we're just doing the same thing. So we're folding this from selvage to selvage so that they match up on the ends here. Give it a shake and then fold it again. Even up your edges as best you can. Give it a shake and then lay it down on your cutting mat. Make sure it's all flat. Oh, so pretty. I'm going to start by evening up my end here because they're all hitting different spots and I don't want that. So I'm going to cut off about 1 inch just to get it really crisp. All right, Cosmos Park, time to get cut. We're going to cut 5 4-inch strips, just like we did before with the first fabric. That's another thing I love about this pattern is it does not take long to cut. Maybe 10 minutes. Okay, here's what we have left, and we are now going to cut 4 3-inch strips. So you'll have a little less extra on this one. I think this floral is going to make such a beautiful border on this. All right, we've cut all of those pieces. Here's what I've got left. Let's see. And that is 4 inches. If you mess up on some of your strips, that's enough to get some out of that last little piece right there. We're ready to start sewing our strips. Let's go to the serger and I'll show you how to do that. Let's start by talking about what a serger actually is. I think that's step 1 here. A serger is a machine that essentially does 3 things in one stitch. The first is that it's going to cut your fabric as you sew it, if you so desire. You don't have to cut the fabric as you sew it, but it is going to trim up the side of your fabric. And that's right here with your knives, which are going to be very sharp. So you want to keep your fingers clear of this area. But as you run a piece of fabric through, you'll see that this little right side here starts to come off. See how it cuts that off? It's going to create a clean edge on whatever you're sewing. You may be wondering why there's 4 spools here. Those spools of thread are essentially knitting themselves around the edge of your fabric, your raw edge. What this does is different depending on the type of fabric you're sewing. So for today, we're sewing quilting cotton. Quilting cotton frays. You can see that if we start pulling on these edges, they're going to start fraying. It's woven, which means that all of those little threads are woven together. And naturally, they're going to want to become unwoven if you pull on them. This locks in that edge. So nothing is going to come up and out of this serged seam. When you're sewing on a knit fabric, a stretchy fabric, what this does is it maintains the stretch of the fabric so that your seam will move with your body and with the knit fabric as you live in the garment. That's important because if you try and sew just a straight stitch on a knit piece of fabric, the stitches will rip out. You're testing those stitches and you're pulling on them until they just break. A serged seam will flow with your fabric, which is amazing. I think it's sort of magical that it does 2 completely different things using the exact same method. The third thing it does is it essentially sews a straight stitch. This bottom is kind of a straight stitch. So if you wanted to do serging in place of regular seams on your sewing machine, you can. They're still going to be nice and strong. It's really just a matter of preference. There's a lot of camps on this. Some people believe that you absolutely should sew a straight stitch right here with your sewing machine and then finish the seam with your serger. My brother, for example, he likes to sew. He hates using a regular sewing machine. If he can do it in just one stitch with his serger, that's what he's going to do. And so far, his clothes haven't fallen off of him, thank goodness. So it's really just a matter of preference. That's the serger in a nutshell. Let me show you how to piece these together. It's so easy and so much fun. You're going to want to grab like some music or an audiobook, something to just vibe out to because you're going to get in the zone on this. I promise. It's the best. All of those strips that we cut last, the 3 inches and the 2 inches, move them aside. We don't want to confuse them with what we're sewing right now. And we're not sewing those right now. I've got 2 piles here. I'm going to take 1 floral piece, 1 pink piece, and I'm going to match the selvages. And y'all, these are long, okay? It's a lot of fabric. It is what it is. This is what makes it fun. It's going to be really easy to want to just like line your fabric up with the side of your machine here, like where this ends. That's not going to give you a 1/4 inch seam. Wherever your knives are cutting is where your 1/4 inch seam is going to be. So I essentially want to line my fabric up with the knives of my machine, which are right here. To be able to see that better, I'm going to put a piece of tape coming straight out from my bottom knife which will be about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And yes, this does matter, as weird as that sounds. So if this helps you, that's a good little tip. Just keep some masking tape in your sewing space, and that'll help you get a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to line up my 2 pieces of fabric together, and yes, it is very long, so just let it hang there in the middle. Put your selvage edges together, and then your 2 side raw edges. I wouldn't pin or clip this. It's pointless. You're going to have to take them all out and move them anyway. So line these 2 edges up, lay this under your machine. I'm lining it up with my piece of tape and start going. And that's going to give you a 1/4 inch seam. Now, I think I have noise canceling on, so it might sound like I'm doing nothing. We had some birds chirping in our right near our chimney this morning, and I was afraid it would be distracting. So you may not be able to hear the Serger. I'm not sure. But it is running. And this is all you have to do. So again, I am just getting like wisps off the edge of my fabric. You don't want to be cutting much right here. And it does matter because we are going to be piecing this and we're going to be matching up some seams later on in the project. And if you do, you know, if you're cutting off a 1/4 inch on one strip and then none on the other, it won't match up properly. So do pay attention to that, and just consistency is the key. And seriously, guys, this is it. This is the project. This is what you're going to do for the next 5 strips. Now, I will tell you, I tell you to cut 5 strips, but you really should only need essentially 4. However, with the wide back fabrics coming in such an array of sizes between 105 inches to up to 120 sometimes, it's just sometimes hard to get that exact for everybody. So that's why I have you cut 5 strips. You may not even need that 5th strip. If you would rather wait and cut your borders once you know if you'll need that 5th strip, that'll save you some fabric. That's totally fine. I just don't want people to get to the end and be like, well, I'm X amount of blocks short. When you actually had the fabric the whole time, you just didn't think to cut it. So you still be fine because we built it into the measurements, but you do you. You do whatever works best for you. I'm going to finish sewing this strip, and then I'm going to sew 4 more just like this. And then I'll meet you back here and I'll show you what to do next. I've got all of my strips cut, and I am now going to cut them down. In my pattern, I put in there that you should press your seams at this step. I'm going to go ahead and say that's optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, because we are going to nest them together when we sew them in the long strips. So it really doesn't matter. Honestly, it makes it a little easier to cut them if they're not pressed. So if you press them out, you'll be cutting like this. And if you don't, you can cut them along just this little folded edge. It's completely up to you. I'm going to show you without pressing it today because that's kind of how I prefer it. Either way is fine. I put that in there because I know new sewists like to press things, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. So I've got this laid out nice and straight on my cutting mat, and at 7.5 inches, I'm going to make my first cut, and I'm going to make sure that I'm cutting through. I want to make sure I'm cutting off the selvage on all ends here. So I've done it in just a little bit, but don't go too far in because we are going to cut it pretty close on these strips if you want to try and get 14 out of it. Not a big deal if you don't, because you've got that whole extra strip to cut whatever. Let's say you mess up one of your cuts. It's there if you need it. So I'm going to go down 7.5 inches and just make a cut. And this is what it should open up to look like a little book with bricks. Like they look like bricks to me. And we're trying to get 14 out of each strip, but that's okay if you don't. Like I said, all of these wide back fabrics tend to be different lengths, and so it's okay. Okay, I'm going to just work my way down the strip. I'm just moving it up to my 7.5 inch line every time and cutting it down. That's it. Repeat this until you get a total of 56 strips. 14 per long strip times 4 would be, 56. Math is hard. All right, I'll meet you back here. This is coming along really nicely. We've got 56 of these cute little brick-like squares. And now we're going to sew them into strips. We need a total of 7 of these blocks per strip. Whatever you start with is how we're going to continue the line so that they're alternating like this. So this is 1, and I've got 2 pieces here, and we are again just using our serger, and we're going to let it roll through right at that 1/4 inch mark. Now, little insider secret, you could stop here and cut your thread and get the next piece and add it onto the end, or we've got 2 here. Just make sure your flowers are on the left again. Match up another set. That'll give us 4, and just chain piece it together. This will make it go just a smidge faster. Okay, now we can cut it. I've got this little thread cutter here that comes in handy. You can just run it through. You are cutting more thread, so you have to use a little bit more force. And then let's lay this out on our table here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we'll have 5, 6, and we'll add 1 onto the end to make 7. Whew, that's pretty. So I'm just gonna flip this on here and sew it together. Are you having fun yet? See, the serger isn't so scary. It feels scary. And I know there's lots of you watching this who are staring at the serger across the room in its box because you're too afraid to get it out. And I understand that. I was the same way. I can only tell you that the only way to learn is to try. So what do you have to lose? It's just sitting there. It's not like it's, going to break just sitting in the box. You might as well try and break it a little bit. I'm just adding on to my end here. But in all seriousness, guys, a serger is just like any other tool in your sewing room. It takes a little bit of time to get used to using it. But once you do, you're going to be so glad that you have it. It really makes a difference in finishing your seams, in sewing knit stretchy fabrics. I mean, once you have a serger, there's just no other way that I will sew stretchy fabrics than with a serger. It's how it's done now. Okay, I've got 1 more square to add to this block here. Through. How happy is that? And you see what I mean when I say it's good to alternate with like a light and a dark. It really adds to the visual effect of the strips in the quilt altogether. So strip 1 is done. We're going to do the same thing with the rest of our blocks. 7 block strips until you run out. You should have 8 total of these when you're done. Okay, finish that up and I'll meet you back here. I messed up on one of my serges and I added an extra panel to one of my rows. And I wanted to show you a really fun little hack I learned from somebody, a woman named Toby at one of my conferences. She said, get one of these eyebrow trimmers, and it's like the battery one. I got it on Amazon for, I don't know, $6. And if you just touch it to the seam, it immediately comes apart, but it doesn't rip your fabric. And I was like, wow, Toby, that's literally genius. So thanks, Toby, for that recommendation. And if you are going to be serging a lot, I recommend getting one of these little eyebrow trimmers. I hate these for my eyebrows. They hurt really bad on my face, but on serging, they work perfectly. There you go. Believe it or not, we are going to be pressing fabric eventually in this project. It's coming up soon. I wanted to show you how I stack my fabrics once I have them sewn in their rows. And in the pattern, I note that it is a good idea to start every row the same way. That way, you know that you will just flip it for the next row. And you don't have to worry about, well, which one did I start with last time? And then it gets all confusing. Just start it with the same color. So for me, I started every row with this floral, and then I just flip it when I make my pile. That said, this row starts with a floral, which means I'm going to put my pink going this direction, okay? Which will give you that staggered alternating look that we're going for. Let's go to the ironing board, and I'm going to show you how to press these strips. Oh, I forgot one. This one will start with floral. So you should have 8 total. Lovely. I like to bring my snips over for this step. While I just kind of hang out here, I'm going to work my way across the row and just cut off any excess, because If you don't, those little serged tails might get stuck in your seam for when you're sewing the whole quilt top together, and then they'll stick out on the quilt top and they're a little harder to take care of and get rid of then. So go ahead and just any tails you see, you could even do it while they're stacked if you want. Just be careful not to cut into your fabric. Now I'm going to lay this flat on my surface, and instead of going to the dark side or whatever side, I'm going to push them all the same way. So just working across my row, pressing those seams all the same direction. Now we are going to want to nest these with the next row. That being said, we need to alternate which way we're pressing the seams so they nest together nicely. My ironing board has gotten very squeaky. I need to get my WD-40 out and give it a little spritzy spritz. I'm going to flip it over and press it from the front as well, just to get any remaining wrinkles out. You could use a starch spray if you wanted to, just to get everything really flat and crisp. See, even I've got this little guy sticking out. He's going to be a problem later, so I'm going to get rid of him now. All right, this one is all set. Now, for the next one, you can see if this is my top row and all of my seams are going left, and this is my second row, I'm going to want all my seams going this way. So I'm going to turn that accordingly. Very good. And we're going to press it. And that's truly all you have to do. Okay. Just keep alternating which way you press those seams, trimming off your serger tails, flattening everything out. And then I will meet you at the serger and we will put this all together to make the quilt top. I can't wait to see this beautiful floral. It's going to be so pretty. Meet you back here in a minute. Look at us making all kinds of good progress. All of my rows are pressed nice and flat, and now it's time to connect them to create the quilt top into a nice big rectangle. So grab your first piece, and we're going to build from the top down. So this is my top left corner of my quilt. I'm going to take my next piece. Make sure when you lay it underneath that the next row starts with the opposite color, and then flip it up. Now, because we ironed so carefully, our seams should be nesting in alternate directions. That means one's going up and one's going down. This will really make an impact on your accuracy of your seams. I'll be honest, this is probably the hardest part of the project because we're going to try and match all those seams, but I need you to hear me when I say this. If they do not all match perfectly and crisply, I don't want you to stop and give up and throw in the towel. I want you to keep going. And the reason for that is nothing has to be perfect, especially if you're learning. I don't expect you to have all these seams matched up perfectly. Are you still going to end up with a snuggly, beautiful, warm quilt at the end? Absolutely. So those little intersections are not as big of a deal as you think they are. Now, if you were entering this into like a fair, or if you're selling it to somebody and you're, wanting to make it really professional, that's when that matters. Right now, we're just having fun. So don't be hard on yourself. I just need you to be nice to yourself because you're doing something really cool today. All right, we're going to nest those seams and we're sewing the strips just like we did before. It's really the same thing over and over again until we get that quilt top all pieced together, which is why it's so good if you just got a serger, because it's going to give you a lot of practice getting your seams right, getting used to the machine and nice long flowing strips. I love this project. And I think when you first get a serger, it's very tempting to be like, oh, now I have to make all kinds of crazy clothes. You can, but you can also do stuff like this, and you just may not have thought about it. So keep this in mind as you're learning and enjoying that serger. I will also put some of my favorite serger suggestions down in the description. My favorite serger for beginners, hands down, all day, every day, is the Brother 1034D. And I have a link to that. You can get it on Sewing Parts online. It's just the best. It's a workhorse. I had mine for 10 years before I upgraded, never had one single issue with it. It's a great machine. Very easy to thread and understand. The serger I'm sewing on today is the Baby Lock Celebrate, also a fantastic serger. Baby Lock and Brother are sister companies, so a lot of their buttons and interfaces are similar. This one is very different from the brother 1034D, but once you learn how a serger works, it really doesn't matter. They're not computerized typically. I've never seen one computerized. There probably is one. The way that a sewing machine would be, where you have to learn all the different like buttons to push. A serger is very much a technical machine and utilitarian in its build. So once you learn it, you've got it. Take your time on this step. Each of those seams, just try and get them as close as you can to nesting together. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Look, just to show you that none of us is perfect. Look, those aren't matched up perfectly. I'm still working. I'm good. I'm not unhappy or sad or beating myself up over it. It's all good. Oh, this is when I love the part of the quilt, because you just start seeing it come together and it's so pretty. All right, take your next strip. So just so you stay aware of what you're doing and on top of where you are in the quilt, continue to lay it flat in front of you and make sure that that next strip that you're laying, it starts with the opposite color, okay? And that's all we're doing here. Just work your way down row by row until you have a full quilt top. And then all we have to do is add our border strips and we'll have a quilt top. You're doing great. Keep it up. Okay, besties, it's time to see our quilt top without the borders. We still have to do the borders, but this is what it looks like with all of those rows sewn together. It's so sweet. Oh gosh, that pink with the like darker maroon color. Heaven on a quilt. All right, take this over to your ironing board and just press those seams where you attach the rows together and just get everything nice and flat and crisp. Then I'm going to show you how to cut and attach our borders, and then our quilt top will be done. All right, the first strip, just pull one out of the pile. I think you have 3 here. Yeah. So go ahead and trim off the selvage edge of this strip. And we're going to measure 2 pieces out of this first strip. They're each going to be 53 inches long. We're going to measure 53, which is right here, and then make that second one the same length. Now, if you're using something that for some reason is shorter than 105 inches, this might be tight for you. So you may have to use some of that extra fabric to cut your second piece. I have about 1/2 inch left over. You should be able to squeeze it in there though, especially if it's longer than 105. Don't buy fabric. I've never seen fabric, the wide back, less than 105 inches in width. But if you see that, try not to get that one because that's not going to work. All right. And then the second 2 pieces, we're going to cut at 62 inches. So, and you're going to need both pieces for that because that will not fit 2 to 1 piece. So what I'm going to do is, to make this easy, especially if you don't have as large of a cutting mat as I do, is we're going to fold this in half. 62 inches divided by 2 is 31. So that's a little bit more palatable to try and cut. So we'll just do 31 inches. Now you could finagle this a little bit and try and save fabric if you didn't want to cut it on the fold. That's fine. I have lots of uses for pieces like that. So we've got one that's 62 inches now. And then I'm just going to cut my second strip the same length. And I'm just going to do that by holding it up to the first piece. I have built extra inches into these measurements because I'm assuming you are a beginner and I don't want you to be stressed out. You can always trim it down if it's too long, but you can't really add it in if it's not there. So that's why I created the pattern like this. It's very forgiving. So put your extra pieces out of the way so you don't get confused. I've got 2 62s and 2 53s right here. While we're over here, I'm going to go ahead and cut my other pieces just so I don't have to do that in a few minutes. So for the outer border, we're going to have 2 3-inch by 60-inch strips. That's our first cut. We should have 4 of these because we're going to need to use one for each side. Yeah, okay. So let's cut off our selvage here. Here, I'll show you how to do it with, if you want to be mindful of your fabric and have as long of a piece left over as possible, is 60 divided by 2 is 30. So we'll just fold this over until we've got 30 inches on each folded side. It's okay if you cut it just a smidge longer just to be safe. It's fine. Right? I like to save all my extra scraps and cut them down into squares, as large as of a square as I can get out of that. So like if this is 3 inches, I'll cut it into a 3 by 3 inch square. Then I put them all in boxes. And when I want to make a scrap quilt, I know that I've got tons of squares just ready to go. So I don't have to spend the whole day cutting and losing momentum. Squares are pretty universal. And if you have larger, if you're cutting it as large as you can, you could always cut it down. If you needed a 2.5 inch square, you could cut it smaller. But I always try and cut the square as large as possible for what I have left in the fabric. That's kind of a fun little tip. All right, so we've got 2 60-inch strips, and now we need to cut 2 more, and they're going to be 66 inches. So we'll fold it over and do 33 on the fold. And again, if you want to make it a little longer, I have built in some extra length, but just to be safe, you might as well. What else are you going to do with it? Cut off that selvage. I'm making my piles like in order of how I'm going to sew them, so that'll help keep me from getting confused because these are very similar in length. 33-ish. Chop it off. Let's sew these on and call it a day on this quilt top. Find the top edge of your quilt top. So the short edge. Mine is right here. Take your first strip that is 53 inches. And first of all, just run it along the top, eyeball it, and make sure that it's cut correctly. Like I said, I built in some extra length here so you can cut this piece off at the end. Better to have more than not enough. And we're just going to lay this right in that corner and start serging it on. If this doesn't give you practice with your serger and get you comfortable with it, I don't know what will. We're just sewing really long lines over and over again. But I always think of a serger as kind of like learning to drive a new car. Every car is different. The way that the brakes feel, the way that it shifts, the different buttons and, baubles and treasures that you find in the interface or the front of the car. It's all different and you have to get used to it. So consider this just you getting used to a new machine. It's very similar. And then after a while, if you think about it, you don't think about where things are in your car, you just know. And that's how learning a serger or any sewing machine really is. It just takes patience and time. And this is perfect because it takes patience and this takes a lot of time. Okay, it doesn't take a lot of time to make this quilt top. We've been wet working for a couple hours now. And also on that note, remember that it's okay to walk away from this for a day or a week or a couple hours, whatever you need to refresh. Your mind is going to continue to reverse engineer whatever you're doing. And when you come back, you may find that you're doing a better job at, tracking your seams and making sure that things are lining up properly. Totally okay to go take a break. The first border is on. Go ahead and snip any excess you have, but make sure you're doing it in a straight line so that your next seam is straight as well. If you need to lay that down and square it up on your mat with your acrylic ruler and your rotary cutter, it's fine. We're going to hop down to the bottom now and repeat the same thing on that end. So I'm going to do that and then I'll meet you back here and I'll show you the sides. It's time to sew on our side borders. So we've got the tops on. And truly, it's the same process. You're just lining this up, pretty sides touching, but now you'll add into this little corner here. So you've got another piece right here. And that's why we cut these side pieces longer so that it would adjust for the amount that we added when we added those other top and bottom borders. So line it up nice and square. Just start sewing. Okay, and then you're going to repeat this on the side, the other side, and this exact same process for your wider borders. In my case, the floral border, it'll go on the exact same way. So you'll sew the top and bottom pieces on, and then the two sides. And then I'm going to meet you back here, and I'm going to show you how my quilt top came out. The quilt top is done. She's pressed. She's pretty. Are you ready to see this gorgeous throwback quilt? Here we go. I love it so much. Look how pretty that border looks. Look how it just makes the whole thing pop. It's so gorgeous. You guys, this is not that hard to do. What makes this fun and unique is that we are using wide back fabrics. We're using our serger to do the whole project, and it turns out absolutely gorgeous with a fully finished, clean-edged back. So if you want to just fold these in and hem the top and the sides and just use it as a tablecloth or a picnic blanket or something easy and quick, you could even use a wall hanging. I mean, you could do so much with just this. You could turn it into a little skirt or a shawl if you wanted to. The options are endless. I'm going to go take a little break, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to quilt this together. We're going to make a quilt sandwich using batting, a little bit of backing. We're just probably going to do some straight line quilting because I seem to be a little obsessed with straight line quilting right now, and then bind it and be done. You can handle this. It's time to quilt the quilt. I'm going to show you how I create my backing, my quilt sandwich, and then how I'm going to quilt today's quilt. You don't have to do it my way. If there is a way that you like better, that is perfectly fine. But for those of you who are just looking for a little bit of direction, here's how we're going to do this. I tossed around some ideas for a while of what backing I wanted to use, and I just kept coming back to this. Does it match? Not even a little bit. But I think that's the fun thing about quilts is it doesn't have to. It can be a totally different story on the back if you want it to be. And I bought this fabric. I don't know why, but I just love it. It looks like dinner plates. I just think it's so cute. And it has this little caterpillar guy that's just happy as a lark. Look at him with his little glasses. So we're going to use it. Why not? I know that this fabric is 44 inches wide and my quilt is 58 inches wide. So we're going to need 2 pieces of this, and we're going to need to cut them to the length and then plus a little bit of yardage just to cover our bases in case something gets shifty while we're making the quilt sandwich. So my quilt is approximately 68 inches long. I'm going to cut 2 of these pieces 75 inches long and sew them in the middle so it creates one really large backing piece. I bought this at Stitcher's Garden before they closed on, I think it was $5 a yard if you bought the rest of the bolt. And so of course I bought it. And let's see, we've got 50 inches here, 60, 75. So I'm going to cut it right here. Straighten it out. Perfect. Cut one more of those. Okay, I'm going to grab my fabric, open it up, make sure that the right side is facing up. So my right side would be the tops of the plates. So the rounded parts of the plates need to be at the top. And I'm going to match it up with my other piece, making sure that those are facing the correct direction as well. This fabric is quirky for sure, but I love it. I'm going to match those long edges on one side, and we're going to sew right down the seam. Now I have selvage on both sides here, so we're going to sew in about 1 inch instead of the normal like 1/2 inch because I want to make sure that none of that selvage gets stuck in the seam. My stitch length is a 2.5, and let's see, we're going to go over about 1 inch. We've got plenty of extra fabric going widthwise, so it's fine to lose this inch of fabric. That's not a big deal. And just sew straight down. Keep going till you get to the bottom. Once you sew down the length of that seam, we're going to trim it up because it is 1 inch wide. So we don't necessarily need all of that hanging out in the middle of the back of our quilt. So I'm just going to trim it up to about 1/4 of an inch. I'm just eyeballing it and moving it as I go. Okay, keep trimming that, and then I'll meet you at the ironing board. Now, I'm not going to try and open up this seam. I'm just going to press it to one side just to get it a little more flat. Anything we can do to streamline the back of that quilt is good. So just work your way down the seam. You can see now that this fabric is perfect. It's going to be nice and big for the back of our quilt. And we'll probably even have a little bit left over, which is awesome. Y'all know I love a good scrap project. So keep pressing this, and then we're going to cut our batting. and then we'll get to making our quilt sandwich. I like to buy my batting by the bolt. I just use a lot of it. Today I'm going to be using Nature's Touch Natural Blend. It is 96 inches. So when I think about that, that's longer than the length of my quilt. So I'm going to use the 96 inches for the length of my quilt, and then all I need to do is cut the width of what I need for the width of my quilt, which I know is 58 inches. So I'm going to cut about 65 inches just to be on the safe side. So we've got 30, and then that would be, double check, 40, 50, 65. Yeah, I'm going to cut it right there, just using my large 60 millimeter rotary cutter, which is great for chopping through large hunks of fabric. See how well that did? This is a great tool. Okay, put this away. Now it's time to get things laid out. The first thing I'm going to lay out is my backing, and I've got that pretty side facing my table. And I'm going to do my best to just kind of get it centered. Now my work table is 71 inches, so my quilt top should easily fit on this work table. If it were larger, you might need to move to the floor, or you could pin it on top of a bed, something larger than your quilt top. But this should work fine. I'm leaving some hanging over the edge here. I want to leave a little bit of leeway at the bottom just in case we need some wiggle room. Once I've got that nice and flat, I'm going to take my batting and I'm sort of rolling it a little bit here so that it's just a bit more manageable. Center it as best you can on the table, making sure you have some leeway on either end. And I'm just going to let that roll off the back. Get it straight. Lovely. Want to try and avoid any wrinkles if possible. But again, if you have some, it's not the end of the world. All right, let's grab our quilt top and lay that on the top. Oh, it's so pretty. Let it hang off the edge here. And the only part I'm focusing on right now is what's right on the table in front of me. That's all I'm worried about, being straight and flat right now. Time to get our safety pins out. Got a nice big box of safety pins here. And for right now, since this is on a grid pattern with the lines going across, that actually helps me with kind of a natural border of where I know things are safe. So I'm going to call my safe zone like up to here for right now. I know that's all flat. So that's the only area I'm going to focus on clipping and pinning. Make sure you go through all the layers. And I try to keep my safety pins about 5 to 6 inches apart. The point of this is we don't want anything to shift when we're moving it around to quilt it. So whatever that looks like for you is how you should do it. These are my favorite quilting safety pins. They have no coil, so it doesn't get stuck in your fabric, and they're on an angle, which makes it easier to get them in and out. They're really great. You can get them on Amazon or at any craft store. So I'm going to focus on pinning my quilt right now and basting it. And as I get one section done, I'm just going to gently pull it forward and work on another small section until I get the whole thing pinned down, and then I'll show you how to quilt it. You're doing great. The quilt is pinned. We're ready to actually sew some quilting lines, but don't be scared because this is going to be super easy. I'm going to show you my favorite beginner-friendly, foolproof method of quilting a quilt if you have absolutely no experience. It's impossible to mess this one up. Now what I've done here is rolled my quilt in from both edges because I want to start in the middle. So I'm starting on my middle row of the quilt, and if I do that, that gives me some leeway to sort of work any wrinkles out as I go. So I always like to start from the middle. I'm going to be using my walking foot for this, and I put on some really pretty kind of like rose pink Floriani embroidery thread on the top, and then I'm just using regular white cotton thread on the bottom. So the pink thread will show up on the pink side, and then the white thread will show up on the back. You can use the same color if you want, but it's also, again, a good opportunity to tell a whole different story on the back side of your quilt. I love that about quilting. I'm going to be quilting with a universal 80-12 needle, and I just put a fresh needle on, and that's a really good thing to remember. Just whenever you start a big project like this, just switch your needle out. You'll be so glad you did. And the last thing I wanted to show you is my quilting gloves. I'm gonna wear these. These help me have traction on my fabric as I'm moving it through the machine, which is really helpful for the stitch we're gonna be doing, which I like to call the meandering wavy stitch. So let me show you how that works. I'm gonna put my stitch length up to a 4 and we'll load this underneath. Now you are gonna wrestle a little bit with this quilt. It's not the tiniest thing in the world, but you can do this, I promise. I'm gonna lift this and put it over my shoulder. Lay it under the machine, wherever you decide to start, and mine's gonna be right where a safety pin is, so I'm gonna take that one out. I'm right at the very edge of my fabric, and there are lots of thoughts around how to start your stitches. For free motion quilting, you're gonna do kind of a different method, but for this one and for this project, I am gonna be just starting my stitch with a back stitch right here at the edge, and it's gonna go a little bit off onto the batting, which is fine. And we're going to start by rocking the fabric back and forth, and that's gonna create what I call the meandering wavy stitch. So let me show you how that works. I'll do it this way and then I'll show you a little bit closer up. So I'm keeping it nice and tight, the 2 rolls, and I'm gonna turn to the right and then turn to the left. And just keep on doing that. The reason I love this stitch is there's no measuring. There's no trying to get your lines a certain length apart. It's okay if they cross over each other. It's supposed to look very whimsical and free. And it works perfectly if you're brand new because there's really no expectation of perfection. It's meant to be crazy looking. So just keep rocking that quilt back and forth. And when you get where you can't move it anymore, tighten up your edges and just keep going. And I'm going across the width of my quilt, and I think that'll look really nice. And you'll take your safety pins out as you go. Make sure you don't sew over them. And then if you want to, you can back stitch here and start a new line, or you can just turn the quilt a little bit and pivot. And I like to sew just right on that fabric, maybe 2 inches down, however far apart you feel like putting those wavy stitches. And then just turn it this way. And then you can just start a whole new line of stitches. It's that easy, y'all. Let's do it again. And you can make them as close together or as far apart as you like. Okay, let me bring you close up so you can really see these stitches. Hold your sides nice and tight. Just move it on through. It's that simple, guys. That is the wavy meandering stitch. I'm gonna do that all the way down my right side. I'm gonna turn the quilt and do it down the left side, guys. That's it. And then we'll be done quilting, and then I'll show you how to finish this up. You are doing such a good job. Keep it up. Our wavy stitches are done and they look so good. It's just such an easy way to quilt something. If you don't want to put a whole lot of thought into it, the wavy stitch is a perfect option. You see how pretty they look? Just very abstract and rolling. Here's the back. Is it upside down or right? Oh yeah, it's right side up. I just think that's so cute. What a fun backing to this quilt. Okay, it's time to trim down our sides and then we're gonna put some binding on and call it a day. Let me show you how to trim them. I like to grab my 6 by 24 quilting ruler for this, and I'm gonna use that 60mm rotary cutter again because we're cutting through quite a few layers of fabric here. So we are just going to line this up with the edge of our quilt as best we can and trim it right along the edge. Remember to keep that rotary cutter closed when you're not cutting. We don't want to have any accidents. Gorgeous. And then I'm just going to do the other 3 sides and I'll meet you back here. So remember when I told you when you cut down all the pieces and the strips of this quilt, you'll have some extra fabric at the end? Well, that turns out to be a good thing because I was able to cut my binding out of what remained of my pink fabric. So this is what I'm going to use for my binding. It was very simple. I just cut it in 2.5-inch strips, sewed them end to end, and now I'm going to attach it to my quilt. I have a full length slow tutorial on this on my YouTube channel. I'll link it in the description. I'm just going to go ahead and attach it for today, but if you want to follow that tutorial, it's below, and it's really helpful if you are just doing your binding for the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and sew mine on. I'm going to hand bind it to the back, and then I'll come back to show you the final quilt. Are you excited? Because I'm excited. See you in a few minutes. The quilt is done. I finished it last night, and then I actually snuggled under it for the rest of the evening because it was just so sweet and snuggly. So here is the throwback quilt completely done. Are you ready? Look how pretty that is. It's so much fun. 2 colors, guys. There's only 2 colors in this quilt, and you can do the whole thing on your serger if you want to, or not if you don't want to. Here's the back with that super fun dinner plate fabric. I think it's perfect for the back of this quilt. Remember, the back of your quilt is an entirely different opportunity to tell a whole different story. So it doesn't have to match, it just has to go. If you want to make your own version of the throwback quilt, remember my pattern is available on my website. Link is down below in the description. You can get this in printed or in PDF if you want to start it right now. So go check it out, and I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. This really is a fun, beginner-friendly quilt. Not a whole lot of stress, but it turns out so beautiful in the end. I'm gonna go get snuggly with my brand new quilt. Thank you so much for following along today. I'm Chelsea with She Sews Seams, and I will see you next time.